But 20 years in the Legion will make a boy man. 20 years in the Legion and they will give you land. 20 years in the Legion, you'll always have a home. 20 years in the legions of Rome.
Good evening, Meridiers. It's great to have folks back again. It's great to be back in the show. I am Graf Ulrich. Welcome to How Shit Works, where we take a look behind the curtain of how things run in the kingdom of Meridiers. I am one of your hosts. I'm a knight, a pelican, and a royal peer, and I have opinions. Tonight, as always, I am joined by my dear friend, the Knight of Kittens himself, the bringer of joy, Baron Erik Martell.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erik Martell. I'm a knight, the Knight of Kittens, and a landed baron. And I have, like Ulrich, opinions.
So you guys might have heard a lot of our opinions this past weekend before last when we live streamed Crown List. I'd like to take a quick second to thank their Majesties for allowing us that opportunity. Thank Mr. Mittens, the Kingdom Seneschal, for all the paperwork you jumped through to let us do that. I'd like to send a special thank you to social media for allowing us to steal a little bit of their thunder and give a different broadcast. And a special thanks or special congratulations to the new heirs of Meridiers, Wolfston and Thorkala. Anything you want to say on that before we get going, Erik?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks. It was a really awesome opportunity. I think it's one of those things you're not going to get a chance to do very much, even in the society that gives us so many opportunities. And it was a blast. And I also want to apologize to social media for photo bombing their live feed. I mean, it wasn't intentional, but I'm still kind of sorry.
I regret nothing. It's been an odd couple of weeks. Lots of folks that I know are vaccinated. Things are starting to get back to normal-ish. We were able to start going to events. That was a nice change. I'd almost forgotten how to event, but it all came back once you got there. But keep your heads down. Keep doing things the safe way. We're working through this stuff, and man, the future's bright.
Tonight is the first episode of our 7th series. That's right, Meridiers. We have inflicted ourselves through 7 series upon the kingdom. And our guest tonight is Master Kevin Eriôl, member of the Noble Order of Former Kingdom Seneschals, and you need to be careful when you say that, an Autocrat extraordinaire. Master Kevin, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I've been bouncing around the SCA entirely in Meridian since late '79, and somewhere on here it asks. I think I'm okay. I'm going to mess Graf Ulrich's order up immediately. Later.
All right. So I'm not sure if that's Kevin or Max Headroom, but so his Master Kevin's having some connection issues. We're going to try and get that back for you here in just a second. Are you back, Kevin?
It did not appear to me that I was gone, so you'll have to tell me when that happens.
You said you were going to go off script, and then you turned into Max Headroom on us.
Okay. I will say that's probably going to happen a lot. Where I live, the best internet connection I have is actually cellular. So I have a tethered cell phone, and there's a rainstorm outside.
Awesome. That sounds fantastic. Well, like we always do, we'll just deal with it as it goes. All right, so you were going to introduce yourself. We got you. We got the been around since 1979.
That's kind of it. Ulrich already tells you I'm a Pelican. I've been a bunch of different offices. I've autocrated a bunch of events, feast credit a bunch of events. I have lots of opinions, and if I ever start sharing them, then it's hard to get me to stop. So there you go.
All of those things may be why you're on this show. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm super happy that you said yes, and we get to share some of your wonderful knowledge and fantastic stories with the Kingdom. I think it'll be a great time to let everyone get to know you. So, as you well know on the show, we have a drinking game. Tonight, we have a couple of words provided to us by Master Kevin, which are activity and improvise. I added insurance in, and then also whenever we say I'm going to go off script here, and it is usually followed by an apology to Jess. You drink if you want to. Don't drink if you don't. It's completely opt in. You're welcome to drink alcohol. You're welcome to not drink alcohol. Please make sure you're of age to drink if you do. But I ain't your daddy. So, for the record, I am drinking bourbon and Coke tonight out of my wonderful Ashton Griffin pottery mug. And as always, we'd like to thank Between Two Peers for allowing us to be a licensed franchisee of their drinking game, which I stole fair and square with Duchess Helga's permission. All right. Questions. Thank you to the audience for popping in and being a part of the show. Yes, please ask questions. Put your questions in the... Awesome. My phone dropped. My headset dropped in and out too. That's great. Anyway, Graf and Katarina will take your questions from the live feed, and we'll do our best to get all those answered at the end of the show, or maybe in the after show if the answers are require a special story from Master Kevin that he can't share in public. All right. So, without further ado, let's get on with the show.
Right. So let's just go ahead and roll right past that. And let's get to know Master Kevin a little bit. So how and when did you first find the SCA?
I found the SCA in the fall of 1979. The how was a friend of mine at the University of Alabama wanted to start a fan group for Darkover. He wanted to do a Friends of Darkover chapter. And we were meeting in his dorm room. And he left a Soldier of Fortune magazine lying out that had this article about this group of guys that had a war up in Pennsylvania. And we looked at it and said, "Hey, Mike, this looks like more fun. There's more stuff to do. Let's start a this instead." So they had an address. We sent off letters to the address. They told us there's already a guy on campus trying to form a group that we should get together. Our group and his group got together, and that was it. Misty Mere was born, and that's how I found the SCA.
All right.
That's a great get-together.
Right. Particularly, that any mention of Soldier of Fortune is really just going to add a little bit of sauce to the story.
Right? I did not expect that one. That's great. All right, so I know that you're a super service guy and you've been, doing stuff for forever. But what's your hook in the SCA? What keeps you coming back and playing after years of playing in the SCA?
Well, there are a couple of things. One of them is the cliche. It really is people. My favorite people are in the SCA. It's where I know them. It's where I can see them. It's where I can visit them. It's where I go online to see them because we haven't been able to visit a lot the last year or so. All the others will come and go. Currently, I'm really, last 10 years, been more and more heavily involved in music. I like medieval music. I like medieval music theory. I've been playing with medieval philosophy and lots of really boring stuff. The folks that aren't interested in it with me. I like doing events. I like seeing people at events. I like autocrating. I like feast creding. I like cooking. I did that long before I ever autocrated. Well, not as long as when I started thinking back, not as long as I thought it had been. And it's a hobby that I share with my wife. So there you go.
So, staying in the early years of your SCA experience, who was your biggest single influence?
I don't know that I'm going to be able to make it be one. Probably the first 8 to 9 months I was in the SCA, I knew almost nobody outside of Misty Mere, which was Tuscaloosa, Alabama. The first people I met were Sir Robert Hightower, Katrina of Iron Mountain, I knew I should have written his name down because I haven't seen him in 30 years, and names, I'm old, so names leave me sometimes. Because all I can remember is Joel, which is his real name, and Francis of the Aran Isles. That's it. Keltar O'Connell. See, thank you so much. That's really embarrassing because there was probably a 6-year stretch when he was, or 5-year stretch when he was my best friend.
At our age, Kevin, I'm happy if I remember my own name sometimes. I think you're probably
we get
okay.
hit in the head a lot.
So you kind of answered my next question already, which is, we know you love all things Pelican and you've served in every way that I can imagine, and probably a few more. I know you've spent two terms as Kingdom Exchequer.
Oof.
And one extended term as Kingdom Exchequer, one is Kingdom Seneschal.
Okay, so it was an extended term. I'm sorry.
My Exchequer term was like a little over 3 years, but it was one term. So
it's really 2 terms. You just did them back to back.
Right. You just Iron Man them.
Just like, I'm just going to be my own deputy. Is that where you kind of went there?
Oof.
Yeah.
It was intentional.
But so I'm going to try and change that because the question was what else do you have a passion for, but you kind of hit us with that in the what else do you have a hook for. So is there a job in the kingdom that you haven't done that you'd like to do? Oh, he's frozen. Yep. And he's gone. Awesome. So hopefully he can come back and we can get this hooked back up. But Master Kevin was Kingdom Seneschal when I was crowned. And I know he was Seneschal through the end of Elenon's last reign. So he's been doing this stuff for a bit.
So well, here we go. Look at that.
Sorry, we dropped.
No,
that's okay.
What was the last thing you heard?
The last thing we heard was me asking if there's a job in the kingdom that you haven't done that you'd like to do, because it seems like you've done everything.
Well, and that works because there was a long pause because I was trying to separate. I've done all the local stuff, but kingdom I've only done the 2, Exchequer and Seneschal, and a couple of little deputy things. And one that would be interesting, but I'm not sure I would be good at it, is actually shadowing. Because you get to talk to people who are learning about the group, learning about the SCA.
Right. No, that'd be good.
And it's a marketing thing. And then, long ago I used to do that.
I did not know that. No, that works.
That's an important one, too. People sometimes underestimate how important. So, do you have an SCA hero? And if you do, who is it and why?
I have a couple. My first true SCA hero was probably Cipriano de Alvarez. And as a college kid coming into the SCA, he did all of the cool stuff that I wanted to do. He fought. He was a bard. He knew all the heraldry stuff that was pretty and bright and flashy. he was kind of the SCA whole deal. Now, older, having done more of this stuff, had more time to learn people, the same guy as everybody's hero, John, Bear Killer. He's done it all. He saved the SCA from itself. I mean, how do you not admire that?
That's legit.
No, that's good. All right. So just a heads up, folks. Expect us to go off script a lot tonight because that's just how being an autocrat is. You have to be ready to improvise, adapt, and overcome. So, could you take a second, cheers, and tell us what exactly is an autocrat and why the hell don't we call it Event Steward?
Okay. An autocrat is, in short version, it's the person who's stuck being responsible for everything happening in an event, both before and pretty much during. They're also they're acting as if they're a deputy seneschal, but they don't get a formal warrant for it. But that's where your authority to do stuff comes from. It comes from the seneschal's legal agent authority, and you're working for them for the purpose of being basically a deputy seneschal for just that event. Why do we not call them an event steward? Well, I don't call them an event steward because when I was just joining this group, there was only the first edition of the Known Rule Handbook, and the only thing we knew about events was a one-page article that Diana Paxson wrote, and she called them autocrats. So I have no idea why they're still doing it.
That may be the best answer I've heard yet.
That is correct, sir. So speaking of terminology, I would like to remind everyone that if you are so inclined to go and sign the petition to have the name of the field changed from the Erik to the Ulrich in honor of our own Graf Ulrich. Now, back to the subject matter at hand.
You sir are a dick.
Oh, no. I want to digress with you on that. The field was never supposed to be called the Erik. That was the marker around the field.
That is
yes,
correct.
That is.
And speaking for all the Eriks in the world, it's time it became the Ulrich.
Yes.
Now. Thank you.
Really, Jessica?
Thank you very much, your ladyship. So, approximately how many events have you autocrated? And do you have a favorite one that you autocrated that comes to mind?
More than 24. How many more? I don't know. I kind of stopped counting. Probably my favorite event, and it's not necessarily because the event went particularly well, but because of something else that happened at it, and it was kind of cool, was a rum. It was rum in 2005. I was the autocrat of the event. My wife was the chancellor of rum, and it's where she got elevated. And I got to help our Pelican plan how to do that. So that's got a special emotional connection.
Sneaky Kevins are sneaky.
Yeah, it didn't work very well because unfortunately our Pelican could not keep a secret from anyone. She's like a senator in a room full of reporters.
Yeah, really hard to keep the surprise elevations a secret unless it's like right after you come out of the meeting and walk straight over to the person. That one is usually a surprise, but more difficult other than those.
All right. And this one, they gave her like 2.5 months to blow this secret, so it was not going to last.
Oh yeah, that 2.5 months. Good Lord.
Yes.
That was never going to happen. Mistress Mitten says that you know where all the bodies are buried. Sneaky man is sneaky. I can't argue with that at all. Her Excellency is wise. All right. So, do you have a process for picking an event you want to autocrat? Or do you just serve where you're needed?
It's always been the opportunity came up thing. Particularly recently, it's almost become the joke. It's just, okay, we want to have this event. Who's going to autocrat it? If a week goes by and no one's raised their hand, okay, If no one else wants to do it, so we have the event. There was a brief period of time when it occurred to me that I autocrated at least one of most of the key LEs that I was missing.
Oops, he Max Headroom on us again. All right, so for all you kids that are watching who don't know who Max Headroom is, go Google Max Headroom.
Okay, folks, real quick, get your over and unders for the number of times Master Kevin will drop.
Oh, he's coming back.
Can't keep a good man down.
Or Kevin.
Yep, the spinners have turned to pictures. This should be a good sign.
Yep, there you go. You're back. All right, so the last part we heard was we need someone to run this event. Someone go get Kevin. I'm making that part up because that's what I think you said. Oh. Has he frozen again? All right, so he's frozen again.
Oh. Wait.
Oh, wait, I think he's typing. We bring you nothing but the most riveting TV here.
I don't know what I was just going to ask a question. Just something that I wanted to do. When we have these issues on other kinds of Zoom video chat, it doesn't drop out as much or disturb the other podcasts if I go to audio only. I don't know if you want to do that. So that's something less limited.
So what we can do is you might want to try connecting through Safari on your phone if you have it. If you have an iPhone, I don't know what you use on an.
I do not have an iPhone.
Nope.
Oh, you're back.
Hey, yeah,
But I'll see if I can get the phone to connect.
you're back.
So far, so good.
So I feel like, though, that this is sort of like a expression of autocrating. Like, you have to be prepared, things that go wrong. You have to change things on the fly. You can't be too rigid about how you want things to go.
You have to improvise.
Yes, and the plan never works. No event plan survives first contact with the event site.
That's fair.
And yes, you have to improvise a lot, all the time.
All right, I think we're to your question, Eric.
Right. So, right. About how far out should you start planning an event once you've been given the duty of being the autocrat for one?
I start planning as soon as they said, yes, you're the autocrat. Actually, I usually start planning before that just in case that's what happens. There's not a lot of planning you can do if you don't already have the site. But once you have a site and an autocrat and you've got a name of the event, you can pretty much start rolling immediately. Just again, know that you're probably changing that plan on a weekly basis, but you can't change a plan until you have one.
So,
That's fair.
as you're coming up with your plan, what are the steps to go through as you're deciding,
Okay.
to host the event?
And this will again all be just the way I do it.
Sure.
It depends a lot on the event. Some events are standing events that happen every year and they've got a theme already. So part of your plan is already there. There are these things we must do. If I'm going to, all the kingdom level events are that way, obviously. And your plan for them mostly starts with, well, let me contact the person at Kingdom who's responsible for that event. Oh, it's Crown List. Let me talk to the Earl Marshal. It's Rum. Let me talk to the Chancellor. And then you see what they want the event to be. And then you go back to your branch because you've got to keep your sponsoring branch and populace and your seneschal happy. And you start talking to them. Okay, here's what we've got so far. What do you guys want to do that we can work in around this? What kind of activities do you want to have at this? We're going to have a feast if it's a weekend event, and from even a day trip if you can stay there long enough. And if we don't have a feast, we're probably going to have a lunch feast until now, when we can't do that for a while still. And then, but it's just, and then for me, once I have some answers to that, I start building my schedule of when I'm going to be able to have these based on the site, which at this point, I know most of the sites we're going to use. I can start putting where are they going to be. So I have a where and I have a when. And because it's just me, that means I have a chart. This thing, this time, this place.
Of course you have a chart.
That's what happens. Okay. Great. A bunch of activities. Now, since I'm only a little stupid, I need people in charge of as many of these different activities as I can recruit people. So that I go, hey, Jane, how's the feast going? What do you need from me? Everything's going on schedule? Yeah. Bob, how's that quest you were wanting to do coming? You need anything? You got your resources? Is it going to fit in this spot? So about the Royal, never mind. You've been talking to them every day.
So this really actually dovetails perfectly into this next bit.
The next thing you were going to.
Nope.
We're actually going to ask you about picking the site. What is it that you look for, and how is it different if it's like a kingdom event?
The biggest thing that's different for a kingdom level event is you need a bigger site, usually because it's usually a bigger event, unless your local events are for Southdowns. Or probably at this point, I'm betting Gladenfield events are pushing that same kind of, their local events will have 200 to 300 people at them. Shires, not so much. Our local events are small. Usually, these days, with a kingdom level event, there's a recommended site. So you go into it already having the site chosen. Now, earlier days when that wasn't true, and when you're doing local events, you'll have probably go-to sites that your group likes, but sometimes they're not available. And then it becomes an availability issue. What can we get? I'm going to say this a lot. That's a get with your seneschal thing, because the seneschal is the only one that can sign a contract to get you a site. Autocrats don't get to do that. So in a very real sense, the autocrat's not picking the site. The seneschal's picking the site. The autocrat's going, what have we got? What site do we have? If the seneschal doesn't know what site they want, they may ask you, well, what are you looking for in a site? And you can tell them what you think perfect is. I want this lovely cabins because I want to do overnight. I want a big area that we can have a tavern. I want a big fighting field. And then your seneschal is going to say, well, we can't do all of that. I got a site that has this and this. Okay, we'll work with that. Improvise, adapt, overcome. So I'm not sure that was the answer you were looking for.
That's the answer we got.
Actually, not only was that a great answer, but it's dovetailed in the first of my hot takes tonight.
Oh, no, here we go.
We, in terms of sites, are one spoiled-ass kingdom. We expect a site to have everything. It's got to have 2 big fighting fields, one for heavier, one for rapier. Then we got to have an even bigger field for live weapons. And we got to have an air-conditioned hall for the feast. It's got to have a level floor for the dancing. We got to have a place to have the classes. You better have a safe place to put the minister of children and all the little ones. And that's not even covering a lot of incidental activities that people want to do. And all of these are great. We only got a few sites that are going to live up to that level of amenities. And some of those are going to be pretty pricey. So then you don't get to complain about the cost of the event if it gives you everything you want. Like, that's the way the real world works. So we got a shortage of sites in some places. People are going to have to adapt.
So Jessica's decreed that we have to drink every time he drops. So, and I have to drink for your hot take. So, no, that's a good hot take. We certainly are spoiled for sights here. A lot of people had a problem with Camp Chicken Poop. I mean, Camp Royal and the Wild Camp in Royal, Alabama. I think it was great for the kingdom though, because it gave us all of that.
And it had a golf cart, giant sombreros, and archery equipment on the bottom floor of the house next to the feast hall.
It did. Most people didn't know that though. All right, where are we? All right, so you got your site. What do you choose for staff? How is that chosen? Is it chosen by you? Is it chosen by the group? Is it chosen by the seneschal? And what kind of different members of staff do you need? Welcome back, by the way.
Usually you've got at least one position that was kind of already lined up when you do, I'm making an assumption here. All the branches I've been a part of, and most branches about it, they have a bid process. Your bid has an autocrat and a feastcrat already on it. So when you're having food, that person's already, that's the core event team that you're bidding to the group. I like to use local officers with that event at an office. I've spent the last 20 years a group that's not so large that there's a lot of competition for who's going to do different things. 13 years immediately was completely the opposite, completely in South. And Autocrat regularly in a group like that take. And if you want to have
All right, that's another drink. He got into the he got right to the beginning of the answer and kind of max headroomed on us again. So we're gonna go with most
audio
likely
only to see if that's going to work better.
It's working. You sound good, but you look horrible.
It has in the past. What was the last thing you heard?
Right as you actually began explaining how you would choose your staff, you got past the.
So we lost
feast
all of
crap
that.
was in the bid.
Okay. After that, if many of the activities you're going to have in an event, they match fairly well with a local officer. So if it's a local event, I always give that person first right of refusal. We have a list, need a marshal. Your group has a night marshal. That's the first person you ask. If they can't do it, then you find someone else. If the exchequer is supposed to have some input onto your registration staff because it's a money handling thing. Again, our group is so small that there's just like 2 people that do that regularly anyway. So a lot of those decisions are kind of pre-made, but if you're in a larger group, is checking that, match people to their interests, and make it people that can work with you and that can work with the other people you're using.
No, that's a good answer.
Absolutely. So if there isn't a specific theme for an event, and God knows I don't know how you throw an event without a specific theme these days, how do you choose what activities there are going to be at the event?
I've actually never done an event that didn't have at least some of the activities already known in advance. You knew if you were having a list. You knew if you were having an A&S fair. You knew if you were having a collegium. So mostly what you're choosing are the extras, the secondary, the ancillary activities you're going to have. And I grew up with the philosophy being you have as many things as you have time and places to have them. So you just start filling things in based on the interests of the people in the group and the people that wanted to be a part of your event until you ran out of spaces and time to have stuff. And you tried not to have more than 2 or 3 going on at the exact same time so that you'd have enough attendees to make all the activities fun. So you might only have one thing during the list. Or in the early days, you had nothing during the list because a big part of the event, and every event had a list, except Midwinter A&S, was people gathered around the fighting field, watched the fighting, kind of had a picnic. So that core period of whatever the main list for the event was just that. And then right after that, you'd have all your other stuff. Quests were really big. I don't know there's anybody on here that's ever been to events that had quests because those died sometime in the early 90s. Eric, you go back that far.
I do.
I've been a part of several quests, usually as a monster because I'm ugly, but still.
Wow.
Why do you think I'll fight in a closed face helm?
I know up through probably 1990, every event had a quest. It was expected. And it was the thing that you did right after the list, usually. Classes, not so much. Classes are a big thing now. Classes used to only exist at a few specific events. You didn't have a lot of classes. But I guess to go back to the actual question, I pick it based on what facilities I have available and what people are willing to come do them. Do I have people who are good at this? Yeah, let's have a this. And we've got a person who's great, who's really heavy into live weapons at our event. Hey, all of our events are going to have live weapons because we have a live weapons marshal. We can do that. To me, it was always much more finding the resources than it was picking what activities you want.
So this is my first chance to really go off script here. So first off, cheers. Second off, so do you find that we try to do too much at events now, or do you like the part where we try to do everything? I like it sounds like you're talking about events had a theme and you tried to follow along with this exact idea, and so there were actually less diverse things to do, but there was more of the tracks that you did have.
Yeah, the back in the day idea was your activities more or less followed whatever your theme was, which was whatever the name of your event was. It was kind of people knew what it was. If your event was called Voyage to Valhalla, you probably had a lot of Viking-oriented stuff in it. If you were Monsters and Mayhem, you probably had a lot of fantasy elements in it. Night Gambit has a lot of chess stuff. Sorry.
Yeah, fantasy elements in the SCA?
Well, you've seen my last name, right?
I have, as a matter of fact. All right, so now for the serious side of the question, which is, all right, so you've got your event planned out, you've got your staff planned out. When and how do you get your event on the Kingdom calendar or in the PC, and how does that event flyer have to work?
Okay, your event should be on the Kingdom calendar before it ever has an Autocrat and possibly before it has a site. It used to always be on the Kingdom calendar before it had a site, but I know some groups are doing that the other way around now. Seneschal is the only one that can submit the dates that your branch wants on the Kingdom calendar, except for the KLEs, which are in Kingdom law, except for this year. So that's, from the Autocrat standpoint, that one's easy. Date's taken care of for you. You've got a date on the calendar, you're going to squish your event in there. If you can't get a site, you then go back to your Seneschal and the group's going, if we're going to have this event, we're going to have to move it because we can't do it this weekend. But that one's not really a thing that the Autocrat is deciding or doing a lot with. The date isn't. Getting on the calendar is not. The Autocrat does usually put the flyer together.
So what happens if you don't get the flyer into the pop shiv?
There are things that you cannot do at your event. There's a whole list of them. They're loosely described in Corpora in section 3, which is the section that talks about events. The biggest thing is no precedence-bearing award can be given at a court, which generally means the Crown's not going to have a court. They also can't announce changes in group status. They can't read changes to kingdom law. All of that stuff is it cannot happen unless you're on the kingdom calendar, and unless you have a flyer in your newsletter.
Nope. That's exactly what we want to make sure people knew.
So you're probably not going to have court if you don't put your flyer in pop shiv. That's
exactly. You're almost certainly not having court if you don't put your flyer in pop shiv.
Okay.
And
so,
and sometimes the Crown will show up at your business meeting, particularly if it's like the Crown's local group that did this, and whack their finger at them and go, "Bad people, bad people."
Well, because it sucks as Kingdom Seneschal when you have to message someone and be like, "Hey, you guys didn't get your flyer in. I know the Crown's going to be there, but you guys can't have court. I mean, you can have court, but you can't give out any awards because they're not going to be they're not going to be recognized. So, it only hurts yourself when you do that. So, just be aware. No one wants to have to make that call.
So once you've decided the when and the where, how does budgeting work? How do you decide all the different costs, and what percentage of people will complain about them?
I'll do it in reverse order. 40% of the people will complain. No matter what the cost is, it doesn't matter. It's too expensive to 40% of the people. 5% of the people will say it's too low and you're running the group into bankruptcy. So 45% of the people are going to be unhappy no matter what you do. My budgeting is fairly simple. If I haven't yet, I talk with my fee scrat. What are you envisioning? What do you need your per person cost to be for food? Most branches and most weekend events, they'll also get that feast and a couple of breakfasts. It's usually not lunch. I'll try not to blow a question you've got later down on the schedule by jumping to that.
That's fine.
Then you've got, what your site cost is. You probably have a good idea, and if not, you can talk to your seneschal and he'll go into his records and he can give you a good idea. Most events at this point in Meridier's history aren't the first time it's ever happened. This event has a history. You have some idea roughly how many people it draws. For many sites, you have a per head cost and you have some fixed costs. It costs this much to have the kitchen. It costs this much to rent the site. Then it's this much per head. So you look at your amount people you expect to get. My advice is take about 80% of that in case your event comes in low, because you never know. Pick between 80 and 90, depending on how confident you are you're going to get at least that many people. Divide that fixed cost part by those number of people you think you are. Add that to your per head cost. Now you've got a site cost. Then add a couple of dollars for all of the incidentals that aren't either renting the site or providing food for people. That covers all the stuff your group might decide to do, hall decorations. Go back and look at the kinds of activities you were planning on putting in and see how much of this is going to cost us money. How much of this only uses things we already own. Get an idea of what your real costs are. And whatever you come up with, allow $1 to $1.50 a person as extra. That's both your cushion in case something happens that you can't afford, and it allows your group to make a little bit of money so that you can do things that aren't events. Because at some point, most groups are paying for a meeting site. They might be paying for their fighter practice site. And for some groups, you want that margin to be higher because they have a lot more expenses. So that's also a conversation you want to have with your group's financial committee, which is your seneschal, your exchequer, and a couple of other people for most groups. So you can look and see, okay, the way our finances go, how much money do we need to make on an event? How important is it that we at least break even? Can we afford to lose a little money if I'm wrong? And then you might become more cautious and bump your money up a little. More advice, particularly for people who are relatively new to autocrating. When you've got your number you think covers your expenses and gives you a cushion, then go look at similar events at the same or very similar sites. If you're more than a couple of dollars out of line, you're going to lose attendance because people will opt to not go because your event's too expensive for that site. Because the populace attending events has, at least in the back of their minds, or many of them do, an idea of, if I'm at Wow Royal, my event costs this much for the weekend, this much for a day trip. If I'm at Indian Springs, it's this. If I'm at Dalwhinnie, it's this. And they're just not going to come if they think they're not getting good value for that. You'll get some people, but you'll lose some people.
And that's an important, you covered a lot of important parts there, that people have an expectation of what an event will cost at a specific site. I know I certainly did, especially when I was younger in the SCA and knew less about autocrating and all the things that go into it, because different activities are going to bring different things to your budget. So you might have an event at a site that normally costs $7, for a day trip, that's going to cost $10 for a day trip with another group. Excuse me. But on that line, when you sorry, I just lost what I was going to say. That coughed through me. So I'll just go to the actual next question. What a concept that'll be. So talk to me about insurance. When do you need proof, and how do you get it? And when do you need extra insurance? By the way, make sure you cover the part about if you don't get your letter in time to get the insurance proof, that you have to deal with Renee. And while we all love Renee and Renee is amazing, you don't want to get that whole portion from Renee where she sends you the bad letter that says you have to pay extra because you didn't get your insurance in time.
Yep. When do you need it? The short answer is when your site requires it. For many sites, particularly ones that the SCA works with a lot, they will either only need the letter that says you have proof of insurance, that says you have insurance, and if you can get that from your seneschal. They might need to see an insurance certificate once in a year for all of the SCA. We have a number of sites that work that way too. So if you're the first group to have an event at that site in a calendar year, they're going to need more proof from you than if you're the second, third, or fourth group to have an event at that site. There are some sites that always want what's called a secondary named insured certificate. That's the thing you've got to go through Renee for. It lists when your event is, and it specifically lists the site's name. They send it often. The easiest way is to have them send it to the site. That's usually what the site wants. That's what the corporate office wants to deal with. You send all your information to the corporate office, to Renee. Renee generates the paper, sends them to a representative of the site. It gets taken care of. Do it early. You're making that flyer up so it can be in PC, and you're a couple months out, 3.
Yep. The only downside to Kevin being on audio is we can't see when he freezes. So the upside is, so when you're getting ready for the event, and my personal opinion is, when you've decided on a site and you talk to that site owner and you know if they need extra insurance, go ahead and email corporate and the corporate person, which will be Renee for only a little while longer. God bless her. I love Renee, and we will miss her desperately when she retires later on this year. But she's got a wonderful replacement whose name just left my head. But I'm sure training under Renee will prep her very well for this position. Oh, look, Kevin's back. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, I don't know what the last thing you heard was. It told me try again, so I knew I had dropped. I'm not sure when I dropped. Oh.
Ulrich, are you muted? No.
Eric, are you hearing me?
Well, there you go. No,
Yeah.
it was me.
Okay.
Y'all are fine. I'm just yammering to a muted mic.
Okay. But yeah, I would say the latest you want to be taking care of the insurance, which is another thing, goes through your seneschal. That's who has to request all that. But you want to be talking to your seneschal and making sure that he knows that or she knows that and they're doing it about the same time you're putting your flyer together at the latest. It gives you plenty of time if you have to have something shipped to the site representative or however you have to do it for all that paperwork to get in hand. The other thing is if you have to have a named insured certificate, that will sometimes cost you extra money and that needs to go back into your pricing. So that's why it's a good time to be handling at the same time you're putting your event flyer together. Because once the first flyer with prices goes in, you're stuck. New expenses that come up, you've got to eat them because you've already published the price.
That's fair.
And the next portion, since Kevin appears to have dropped on us again, is if you're having equestrian activities. There's a special equestrian waiver that has to go in, and a special equestrian insurance that you have to make sure you have. All of that stuff you can get through the Kingdom Seneschal. They should have a file for you to fill out and pay for anything that's necessary there. Oh, and he's back. I just covered equestrian insurance, Kevin.
Yep. You said you had a question with insurance?
No, I just covered equestrian insurance. And by the way, we've said insurance about 17 times. So I'm just going to go and finish this mug and get another one.
Just kill whatever you have.
Since it was its own topic.
So let's move on to the next portion. We're going to talk about the day of the event. If you would, please walk us through how that day/weekend works.
Okay. You have a site opening time. You have one that's published, and then usually you have a, quote, real one. That's when you and the rest of the event staff can show up. You're going to be setting things up. Whatever your first activities are, first activity that's at any physical spot on the site, go ahead and start setting it up then. Make sure that your registration people have their spot and that they are ready 15 minutes at minimum before the official opening of the site. If you have done what I was talking about earlier and you have someone for each of your activities, so that you basically have a head of every major thing happening, then your event mostly consists of going between all the spots where something's happening on your site and checking in with the person in charge of each of those spots and seeing if they need anything and how is everything going until you find something that's broken. Make sure one of those spots you check a lot are your sanitary facilities. The bathroom broken is a huge bad, and it can be a difficult to fix bad. But you are a rover and a troubleshooter day of. Your organizing work and your planning work, that all happened before you got there. That's why I will tell people when we're talking about sitting and talking about events with relatively new people who are wanting to have one, your Feastcrat is the hardest working person in your branch on the day of the event. Your Autocrat's done almost all their work in advance. So they're basically being like a manager. There's a principle in magic called the management by walking around. That's what your Autocrat does. Once you get old, and particularly if you've been fat for 60 years, like one of us, you might want to recruit a co-Autocrat on the basis of She's fast. She doesn't mind running over to the live weapons field to check on them for me at 3 PM when I'm dead tired.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am. I always look at it as the Autocrat. Once you get to the event, the Autocrat's job is to make sure everyone's having a good time, make sure that everyone has everything they need to have a good to run their particular activity, and to put out fires, and to be there to put out fires when they need to.
Yep. Talk to as many of your guests as you can, and make it a special point to talk to anybody you know of who's new.
Yep.
Spend time with the new people and see what they like and don't like, and what you can help them find that they might want to do.
All right. So, Kevin, you've been doing this for a hot minute now. How has Autocrat changed from the early days of the kingdom before social media versus now or after? Other than, we have our phones can tell us how to get to site, and we don't have to deal with the concept of the site's in the same place it is every year, and that's your map.
Well, the directions really are a huge thing. We had 7 years in Meridies when if you were coming from the west of Atlanta, you had directions in your hand that told you to turn in the middle of a bridge. If you're going to Well Royal, that's where they told you to turn, in the middle of a bridge. But publicity is the biggest change has been publicity. When I was starting out, you had your flyer in Pop Shiv. That was the majority of your advertising. You went to other people's events and took hard copies of the flyer. You'd have a long flyer that had more detail that wouldn't fit on the half page or the page that you had in Pop Shiv, and you would ask for permission to put that on another group's registration table. You would hand them out wherever you could. You'd send, and the 2 months before your group's event, a topic at every meeting of your group, anytime your group got together, you're going, who's going to an event in the next 2 weeks? Here, can you take these flyers? Be sure and tell them about our event. It used to be a court announcement. I'm not sure how long it's been since I've seen an autocrat of an upcoming event get up in court and go, and be sure 3 weeks from now to come down to Shire over yonder for our event.
That'd be awesome. That'd be great.
So marketing and publicity, that's the biggest thing it's done. Everybody relies on social media to tell them where stuff's going on. I have a feeling that what's going to be added to the social media advertising part now is we're going to keep doing streaming activities as we go forward. So one of the activities you're going to have to plan for as an Autocrat is a place for the streaming team to be, and what activities you want them to be able to stream and what they want to stream. So that's going to be that's just a new thing to add to your list of activities you have at the event as you have your streaming people.
That's a very good point. I want to remind people in the live feed to get your questions in for later in the show because we're rolling up to close to that point. Additionally, I want to tell all of the new people who might be listening, or even the relatively new people, that you do not appreciate what you have in Google Maps.
No joke.
You have not lived in the SCA until a creepy convenience store clerk has leaned over the counter after you've asked directions and gone, beware of Signal Mountain. Like you're in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? So, now I'll get to the question. How do you see the running of events and autocrating changing in the post-pandemic era, specifically?
The biggest difference, well, we're going to have a slow rollout of what you can do. How slow, I'm not sure. Nobody knows yet. So your events are going to be restricted, at least initially. They're going to be things we just can't do. The most obvious one is it looks like we're opening without feasts. And feasts are a huge part of Meridies. But other than that, it's the fact that you're going to have the streaming people. Your streaming media is going to be a part of your event. So you need to plan for it.
Man, I hate those guys.
Glory hounds.
I know, right?
And glory stags.
Oh, well done. Well done. I see what you did there. All right. So we get into our multi-part question, and I'll take the first portion. What is the most difficult part of being an autocrat, and what takes up most of your energy?
Most of the time,
Most of the time, it's pesky people with specific questions and requirements. I'm just kidding. I'm just making that up as you go along. Speaking as a former pain in the ass crown, it's pain in the ass crowns who want specific things. They're fine. For the most part, the crowns are super nice, and they have a person that contacts you and says, "Hey, can we have a space?" It's people who demand cabins. That's it. All right, Kevin's back, and he can actually answer the question instead of me pissing off half the kingdom.
Oh yeah, back again.
Yay! All right, so we'll try that again. I lost where I was. So what's the most difficult part of being an autocrat and takes up most of your energy?
do you have me? Because I can't tell.
Yep, we've got you. Come with it, baby.
Okay. Before the event, it's getting your staff together, making sure you've got someone for every activity, and then communicating with them. Because what you're really doing is communicating and coordinating. The day of, it's that walking around the event, and you're in your head, or at least I do. I assume everybody does. You'll have, I haven't talked to these people yet. There could be a disaster. That could be on fire. I need to go check on that.
Sorry, we've gone off the rails here.
So what's the most frustrating part?
I mean, other than the technology.
Okay, between my connection and the laughing, I'm not sure I heard enough of that question.
No, sorry. What is the most frustrating part? Sorry, I was just laughing that Ulrich dropped just a second ago, and I was like, well, shit, Ulrich's gone.
The most frustrating part to me is the very last minute changes. And they're only truly frustrating if you don't have in your back pocket an immediate way to handle them. The first time you do a kingdom level event, the crown shows up and they want to change everything. No, I thought we'd do court it too. If it's the first time you've done a KLE, you're probably not prepared for that. Now, the second time you do one, you go, hey, the crown might show up and change everything.
That's perfectly reasonable.
My favorite one as Chancellor was always when the autocrat would come to me and tell me that as Chancellor the crown was late for court. I'm like, well, go ahead and try to start without them, and we'll just join you when we get there.
Yeah, that's
they didn't think
bad.
They didn't think it was as funny as I did. All right, so what's the most fun part about being an autocrat?
When people come up to you and go, this was great. I haven't had this much fun in 3 months. That's it. There's nothing better than that.
Few things are better than a job well done.
That's true. That sounds like the most rewarding, which is what I was going to ask, and not the most fun.
Well,
so
I think rewards are fun.
Okay, rewards are fun. But what's do you ever get up to shenanigans, like when you're autocrating? I mean, that sounds like a really good time.
Yes, but it's
Allegedly.
usually with a subset of the staff that it's off. If you have a staff cabin, the staff cabin is a rocking place, and there's a reason we close the doors.
That's fair.
That's legit.
Right, that's completely fair.
All right. So the last question we have of our planned questions, our pre-planned scripted questions, is if you could give one piece of advice to someone considering autocrating an event for the first time, what would that advice be?
Make friends with the most experienced autocrat in your group and have lunch with them a couple of times early in the planning.
That's a good one.
That is.
My
that's
advice to them is to
really good.
my advice to them is to get to know Kevin and Connell.
Well, that counts, but if you're going to have lunch with me, it's got to be in Montgomery. Sorry.
That's fine. Some things are worth the trip. All right, so we only have a couple of live feed questions, so we're going to do a couple of myths and misconception questions first. You want to grab one, Eric?
Yeah, I actually do. Because as we all know, I always gravitate towards the biggest, most problematic, most controversial thing. So tell us about the biggest dumpster fire you have encountered as an autocrat. And like get deep in it.
This would actually have been so much more fun if I was doing the Feast Crack show. I've had much bigger dumpster fires in the kitchen.
Testify.
Probably. Okay.
We're not
I'm
going
actually
to
going
limit
to cheat a little. I'm going to use
story.
an example that wasn't mine.
That's fair.
The biggest dumpster fire from an autocrat standpoint I have ever seen was a weekend long, back when Arts and Sciences without Crown List added was still a 3-day event. You had all day Saturday and all day Sunday, and people left on Monday morning. Sunday morning, the autocrat found out that the site had rented to another group, and they had to be gone at 2, and they still had activities happening and a feast and a court.
Our yoinks.
Right.
That's a dumpster fire.
I don't even know where to go with that.
Not
Well,
the court.
Not or feast.
All right.
So
Wow.
So what did they do?
Yeah.
I think, like everybody, hey, we're sorry. This is not our fault. This is the site owners. There was this fine print escape clause in their contract that this particular class of person could claim the site whenever they wanted to, and they just did. So we have to be out of here by 2. Their Majesties have graciously decided to have a noon court, and we're going to serve the parts of the feast that are ready for lunch.
That's pretty good thinking. Can
That
you
is
share
good
who's
thinking.
with us? Can you share with us who that fast thinking autocrat was?
I don't remember the name of the autocrat. It was a Brynmatic event, though.
Oh, well done.
Yep.
Good
Well
job,
done.
Brynmatic. All right, so my biggest misconception, or possibly myth, we'll see, giving your answer. So are cabins actually required in Meridiers for summer/winter events? Really, like pretty much any event? Because it seems like we always have cabins.
There is no technical requirement for cabins. For many years, if you were going to have any actual people show up to your event, and it happened between, say, November 1st and 31st, there better be cabins for no one's coming. Summers, a lot of summer events were day trip events and raised just for that, because a lot of the sites that we had cabins at, the cabins were not air conditioned. And a non-air conditioned cabin does not buy you much in July.
It does not.
Over the past, I'd even go further than 25 years is when it really started happening. You saw more day events, more weekend events that people were willing to day trip and stay off site. So then cabins became less important. And now we have a segment of the populace that actively seeks events where they can tent. And if you have an event with cabins only and no tenting, you lose them. They won't stay in a cabin.
I remember when we were first putting together the requirements for MGT. We didn't want to include cabins as a requirement, but we realized quickly that we would lose people. like lots and lots of people at the end of September if you didn't have cabins.
And I remember the same debate also about MGT, that you also had to have camping.
Yep, got to have them both.
That was in the heyday of the A-frame tent camp, and that was 50 people that were going to be at MGT, but only if they could tent.
Yep.
I need one of those.
All right, Eric.
All right. So let's talk about service animals. As the Knight of Kittens, I'm intimately familiar with this question, and I realize that, given that exalted title, that any animal I have is a service animal. But for other people, what is not a service animal? And can you ask what service the animal provides? And do they need certification? I mean, other people's animals.
Okay. Lots of parts. And we have some society guidance that, as far as I know, has never been overturned that specifically addresses it. Service animals are dogs and miniature horses. We are done. Everything else is a pet. To bring them on the side, the contract has to allow pets, unless it's a dog or a miniature horse. Can you ask for their certification? No. Can you ask what service it provides? No. You have to take their word for it. And that's not an FCA rule either. That's a many of the states in which Meridies exists have that as a law.
Actually, I believe the latest guidance is you can ask what service the animal provides. You cannot ask what disability the person has.
Yeah, you can't ask for disability, and you cannot ask for the paperwork that says this is a certified service animal.
Right.
So what we're saying is other people cannot have a service cat, but they can have a service miniature horse. Anybody know how that got delineated out? As in, really, I just want to know how they decided, we're going to add in miniature horses.
Because when the ADA was saying what animals people like restaurants had to allow people to bring in, there were people who were allergic to dogs, so there had to be another optional animal. There were people who were training horses for all of the normal things. There were physical assistance animals, there were seeing eye horses, all of the things that you would train a dog to do, there were people professionally training horses to do it. That's why it got written into all the stuff.
That is completely reasonable and not as nearly as interesting as I was hoping for.
Right? Totally legit. All right, so our last myth and misconception before we get into the only one live feed question that we had, which Alice will feed us in Graphing Katarina will feed us in a second. So what's the most obscure thing you've had to prep for when planning an event?
Trying to think of something that was truly obscure.
I mean, it can be fun.
Well, at the time it was obscure. At the time it was obscure because it had never been done before. I autocrated an event at Tekakwitha where we were burning a Viking longship in the lake.
That's pretty obscure.
It's pretty obscure.
The prep included things like notifying the volunteer fire department so that when the smoke came up, they didn't come rushing out.
Right?
Right. Or alternatively, not telling them and just letting it be like fireworks.
No, that's a horrible idea.
No, that's bad. Your seneschal will hate you because if they show up, he has paperwork to fill out.
Oh, sure.
And a really tight timeline to fill it out in.
That just means Mitty's getting a call at midnight.
Yes.
All right, Eric.
All right.
Ask the live feed question.
All right, I'm going to ask the live feed question, and it's from Owen McKenna. And
Clyde.
What's the best way to train up a first-time autocrat? And does he mean like with a shock collar or like? That seems a bit much.
Let's see, like the shock collar of the dog biscuit out of it for a moment. But probably the best thing to do is to have them be your co-autocrat with experienced autocrat. people have published guides, and the guides are useful and have hints and tips, and shows like this can have hints and tips. But there's no way to learn how to do this unless you're shadowing somebody who's doing it.
Yep. You got to be the man or woman or person in the line of fire, taking dealing with the situations as they come. All right. Yay, Kevin. All right.
I thought I'd come on camera so that the people watching have the rare experience of seeing me drink an alcoholic beverage.
Woohoo! I count that as a personal victory. All right. By the way, what are you drinking tonight, Kevin?
I am drinking Angry Orchard apple cider because I happen to have a couple in the fridge that I thought, okay, this is a good time to pop one.
Well, now that I know that's what you drink, I'll make sure you have more of them. Because that's me. I'm a bad idea bear. All right, so...
Wait. That sounds like a great idea.
First of all, I don't drink alcohol if I'm driving again that evening.
Well, sure. No,
I don't drink a lot at events because we tend to stay off site a lot these days, and I'm the one driving to the hotel.
Right, but oftentimes you're at the same hotel as me, so...
Correct.
That's true. No, we can get together at the hotel because I get to go to sleep before I have to drive after that.
There you go. All right. So is there anything that we've missed here that you really was coming into the show? You were like, I really want to cover this bit. Is there anything that you want to make sure you gets out there and gets heard?
I think we've got it all. I'm going to restate something because I've run into too many people who don't quite understand it. The Autocrat works for the Seneschal. Everything event related is technically belongs to the Seneschal or that sponsoring group, including the Autocrat. If you need let me drop the camera off to make sure I don't break up on sound. If you need an org chart because you're that kind of person, the Feastcrat is technically working for the Autocrat, although if you want your event to be successful, you're viewing it more like a partnership. And everybody's working for the Seneschal.
And as always, the Seneschal works for the Kingdom Seneschal. So
yes,
it works for
the Society Seneschal, works for the board.
With the crown, yeah. So just a quick one. I love this story. I once showed up to an event as Kingdom Seneschal and asked to talk to the Autocrat. And they said, well, the Autocrat went home and went to bed. I was like, okay. Do you have a co-Autocrat here? Well, no, they won't be here till tomorrow. All right, well, then I need to talk to your Seneschal. Well, they're not coming to this event. And I was like, well, okay, I'm going to sit right here and talk to you until someone who's in charge can come back to site. Well, no one's coming back to site. All right, well, you either get someone back to this site or I'm closing this event down because you don't have anyone legally in charge of the event on the site. So just out there, everyone, please remember that the Autocrat has to stay on site. Hard stop.
And in the nature of a confessional, those snickers you were hearing from roughly over your right shoulder, kind of towards the wall that had the big windows in it, that was me and my wife.
Oh, were you guys there that night?
Yes.
Awesome. That's funny.
Someone had just told us that the Autocrat has just left, and we'd already gone through the same set of questions. And we're going, oh, that's okay. The Kingdom Seneschal is about to go through registration. This will be fun.
If you're done being broken, Eric.
So this is the point of the show where we do shout outs, which is sort of the opposite of what just happened. Any shows you're watching, any people doing good things in the kingdom, pretty much the opposite of what we were just talking about, that you'd like to point out. And like always, I get to start. So I'm going to give a shout out to Earl Bryce for marshaling the entire Crown tournament in the heat and the really, really mugginess. And he did that without a butt to help support him while he stood up. We owe that man a debt of gratitude.
Kevin, you got any shout-outs?
Yeah, Kevin, obscure one. Baroness Katja. I'm watching her do what I think is a bang-up job as Kingdom Exchequer. And okay, I can't say why I think it was particularly good. This is too open a forum. We'll talk about that later.
No, that's fine.
I,
You don't have to have a reason.
are we
You
going
don't
to
have
get
to give-
bumped off?
And
Yeah, you don't
Jessica
have to give-
for like making this show work.
Oh yeah.
I gave her all sorts of hurdles because I have to live in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, yeah, we are contractually obligated to note that Jessica runs the entire universe, and whatever you think is happening in your universe is really just her will.
She controls the horizontal and the vertical. All right, so
I agree
guys, we're going to have to come back to this show at some point. I literally have another page and a half of questions for the Autocrat person. May not be Kevin, maybe Kevin, we'll see, but we'll have to do a follow-up show just to get through part of these. But my shout out tonight, since you've taken Jessica from me, is going to go to our Kingdom social media team, who were all over the place at Crown List, and we're doing good work, getting out on the field. Those ladies were fantastic, and thank you so much for doing that. On my other shout out goes to Coach's Corner, Duke Sean, Duke Branos, Viscount Tristram do a fantastic job of keeping the fighters of the SCA engaged during the end of this pandemic, and give them a watch on Friday nights at 6 p.m. Central. It's good stuff to watch. All right, I was looking around for who was going to talk to the next part, but that's me. So so thanks, Master Kevin. Master Kevin, bag of donuts. If you don't know, there's a story behind that. For joining us and hanging out. Also like to thank our crew, Jessica, Adriana, Katerina, Kikuchi, Margaret, and most importantly, you, our audience, without whom we would not have a reason to do this show. So thank you all.
I feel like
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
I think it's important to note that the Master Kevin bag of donuts is not related to the Robert Glennon of Ock gas station donut story.
No, that's two completely different sets of donuts.
Our next episode will be Monday, June 28th, with Autocrat extraordinaire, Mistress Elegant.
Remember, don't forget, all shows are at 6 p.m. So if you're watching the replay on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button down. I haven't done this in a while. Down here. Good Lord, how long since we've done this? Down here,
3 weeks,
like,
man.
Subscribe, follow. And then if you're watching on Facebook, then up here in the corner, like and follow that, and give us some love on Facebook and YouTube so that we can do those algorithms good and get more people watching.
Finally, if you're watching live, and God bless you, give us about 5 minutes for a break, then feel free to join us on Zoom for the after show where we might discuss stories about snake jugglings, firearms at events, fireballing the tops of trees. We ain't got the time or the liability insurance to cover that here. Watch the live feed comments on Facebook for the links. If you are mentioned in this chat, we're very sorry about it. We'll hang out and chat for about a half an hour after the show. I will definitely probably be mentioned. Graf and Katerina is going to post it for us right now.
All right, quick, before we go, I don't understand how this timeline works anymore, but we've got merch. Go to hound-and-stag.com and buy our merchandise. Or not, do what you want. You're responsible adults, mostly. Other than that, you guys have a wonderful night.
Just remember, if you want to Eric hotcakes all over your chest, send a message to Ulrich, and we'll get on that.
I'll get that one made. Night, everybody.
Good night.
Join us in the Zoom.
And if I die in battle, tomorrow I will be home, though it's 70 days march to there from Rome. But a soul travels swiftly on the night wind, and if I die in battle, I'll be home again.